My phone buzzed with a text from my mom that made my blood run cold. 15 relatives will spend the weekend at your beach villa. Before I could even process the shock, my dad chimed in with a demanding follow-up. Fill the fridge before Friday. Don't embarrass us. I stared at the screen in absolute disbelief. My hands shook with anger as I typed back a single, definitive word. No. Seconds later, my brother sent a laughing emoji, followed by a text that sent a chill straight down my spine. We'll be there whether you like it or not. Friday morning, they're calling nonstop. They are already on their way to my property, completely unaware that the security gates are completely locked down. They think they are getting a free luxury vacation, but I am about to teach my entitled family a lesson in boundaries they will never forget. My name is Ashley, and at 28 years old, I finally accomplished something my family always claimed was impossible for someone like me. I bought my very own beach villa. For the past 6 years, while my brother lounged around expecting handouts, I worked 70-hour weeks, skipped vacations, and poured every ounce of my energy into building a successful career. This villa wasn't just a piece of real estate. It was my sanctuary, a tangible proof of my independence, and the one place where I could finally escape the constant noise of the world. But my family had a completely different view of my hard work. To them, my success wasn't something to be celebrated. It was a resource to be exploited. My mother, in particular, had spent my entire life treating my boundaries like mere suggestions. In her eyes, because she gave birth to me, anything I owned automatically belonged to the entire family collective. If I bought a nice car, I was expected to lend it to my cousins. If I saved up money, I was guilted into paying for family dinners. They always undermined my achievements, whispering behind my back that I was just lucky or selfish for prioritizing my career over family demands. Yet, the moment they realized my new property was right on the coast, their condescending attitude vanished, replaced by a predatory eagerness. They didn't see the years of sleepless nights or the financial risks I took to secure this home. They just saw a luxury asset they could use to boost their own social status without spending a single dime. I knew they would eventually ask to visit, but I never could have anticipated the sheer audacity of what my mother was secretly planning behind my back. It all started at midnight on a random Tuesday, when the familiar chime of my phone broke the silence of my bedroom. I reached over, expecting an automated work alert, but instead, I found a text notification from my mother that instantly made my blood run cold. The message was incredibly blunt. 15 relatives will spend the weekend at your beach villa. Before my brain could even fully process the shock of that statement, a follow-up text flashed on the screen from my dad. His message carried an equally demanding, aggressive tone. Fill the fridge before Friday. Don't embarrass us. I sat up in bed, my heart hammering against my ribs as I stared at the glowing screen in absolute disbelief. This wasn't a polite request, nor was it a casual conversation. It was a hostile takeover of my private property disguised as a family directive. My mother hadn't bothered to ask if the villa was available, if I was hosting clients, or if I even wanted people in my space. She had simply coordinated an entire 3-day luxury getaway for 15 people, including aunts, uncles, and cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. My hands shook with a mixture of rage and adrenaline as I unlocked the phone, pulled up the family group chat, and typed back a single, definitive word: no. I hoped that would end it, but the response was almost instantaneous. My brother, true to his entitled nature, sent a laughing emoji, followed by a text that sent a physical chill straight down my spine. We'll be there whether you like it or not. It was at that exact moment I realized they weren't looking for permission. They genuinely believed I wouldn't have the courage to stand up to them. The group chat immediately erupted into utter chaos, and my phone wouldn't stop vibrating against my nightstand. Before I show you how I handled this nightmare, I want to hear your thoughts. What would you do if your family tried a hostile takeover of your home? Comment the name of the city you are watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. And don't forget to follow along until the very end to see exactly how this explosive showdown concluded. Once my brother sent that mocking text, the rest of the family treated it as a green light to ignore my refusal entirely. Aunts, uncles, and cousins who hadn't checked on me in years suddenly flooded the chat with aggressive demands. My Aunt Susan chimed in, assuming she automatically deserved the master suite because of her bad back. My cousin Todd started listing the expensive brands of craft beer and premium steaks I was expected to buy, reminding me that Dad said to have the fridge fully stocked before Friday afternoon. Not a single person asked how I felt or offered to pay for a single grocery item. My mother completely took over the narrative, texting everyone that I was just being dramatic as usual, but that everything was perfectly handled. The sheer entitlement dripping from every message made my stomach churn. They were openly dividing up my home, assigning bedrooms, and planning a lavish coastal vacation entirely at my expense. They truly believed that because we shared the same blood, I would eventually cave to the pressure, put on a fake smile, and play the role of the submissive host. But as I watched the notifications pile up, a cold determination took over. They wanted a vacation, but I was preparing a trap. By Friday morning, the silence of my villa was completely shattered by a barrage of non-stop calls. My phone screen lit up every 2 minutes with my mother's name, followed by calls from my dad and my brother. I didn't answer a single one of them. Instead, I poured myself a calm cup of coffee and walked down to the main security office of my gated community. My neighborhood has incredibly strict access protocols, something my family had completely forgotten in their rush to exploit my success. Visitors cannot enter the gates unless the homeowner explicitly authorizes their vehicle license plate with the front guard desk. I sat down with the head of security, a serious man named Marcus, and formally revoked any blanket guest permissions for the weekend. I gave him a specific list of my family's names and vehicle descriptions, explicitly telling him that 15 people were traveling in a caravan to my address and were absolutely not permitted to enter under any circumstances. Marcus nodded, marking my account as a strict lockdown zone. After securing the perimeter, I walked back to my villa and immediately changed the digital lock codes on both the front door and the guest house entrance. If they somehow managed to slip past the gate, they still wouldn't be able to step a single foot inside my home. My phone continued to vibrate violently in my pocket, the screen filled with angry texts demanding to know why I wasn't picking up when they were only 30 minutes away from the coast. They were already driving down the highway, completely convinced that a weekend of luxury and free amenities was waiting for them. They had no idea that their entitled caravan was about to slam directly into a brick wall. At precisely 2 o'clock, the storm finally arrived at the front entrance. I watched through my security app as 3 large SUVs pulled up to the gated community checkpoint, packed to the brim with luggage, beach gear, and 15 eager relatives. My mother rolled down her window, confidently telling the guard they were here for the Whitaker Villa, expecting the heavy iron gates to swing wide open. Instead, the guard stepped out, checked his clipboard, and calmly informed her that their names were on a strict no-entry list and they needed to turn around immediately. Within seconds, my phone practically exploded. I finally answered, and my mother's voice screamed through the speaker so loudly I had to hold the phone away from my ear. "Ashley, what is the meaning of this?" she shrieked, her voice trembling with rage. "The security guard is refusing to let us in. Tell him right now that we are your family and he needs to open the gate." I took a slow sip of my drink and kept my voice completely flat. "I told you no on Tuesday, Mom. I changed the gate codes and locked down the property. You aren't coming in." "You selfish little brat," my dad roared in the background, grabbing the phone from her. "We are your parents. We raised you. You have a legal and moral obligation to provide for this family. Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is for us in front of your aunts and uncles? Override this gate right now." The sheer, unadulterated financial entitlement radiating from his voice was staggering. They truly believed that giving birth to me gave them a permanent deed to my life and property. They weren't guests. They were invaders who felt entitled to my hard work. "I don't care how embarrassed you are," I replied, my voice chillingly calm. "I gave you my answer days ago, and you chose to ignore it. Turn your cars around and leave, because if you don't block the entrance within 5 minutes, Marcus and his team are going to call the local police to have all 3 of your vehicles formally trespassed from the property." A stunned silence fell over the line, followed by a flurry of frantic, hushed arguments in the background. My brother tried to shout something else into the phone, but I hung up cleanly, cutting off his voice entirely. I watched the security feed as the reality of the situation finally sank in. There would be no free beach villa, no master suite for Aunt Susan, and no premium steaks at my expense. The caravan of 3 SUVs was forced to awkwardly reverse out of the driveway under the watchful eyes of the security guards. Because it was peak summer weekend season on the coast, every decent hotel in the area was entirely booked up. They were forced to scramble, eventually piling into a few low-quality, vastly overpriced motel rooms miles away from the water. Their grand plan to exploit my hard work and enjoy a free luxury vacation had completely blown up in their faces. For the first time in my life, I had stood my ground against their toxic entitlement, and the absolute silence that followed was the most beautiful thing I had ever heard. I spent the rest of the weekend exactly the way I wanted, in complete peace and absolute luxury, enjoying the stunning ocean views from my balcony without a single soul disrupting my sanctuary. Standing up to my family wasn't easy, but drawing that line in the sand was the most liberating thing I have ever done. My property is mine alone, earned through my own sweat and sleepless nights, and no amount of family guilt will ever change that again. Now, I'm deeply curious about all of you who have followed my journey until the very end. How would you have handled a situation like this if your own parents tried to hijack your home? Would you have stood your ground at the gates, or would you have caved to the pressure? Let me know your thoughts and family stories in the comment section below. I read as many as I can. Meanwhile, I am leaving 2 other incredible stories right here on the screen that I know will completely shock you. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next story.